I've been thinking about making this video for a while. I talk a whole lot on here about movies and the workings behind the scenes of movies and how a lot of stuff behind the scenes is not doing so well right now, which is why the output of movies that we've been getting is really, really terrible. But I read your guys' comments, and some of those comments are really, really melodramatic. I'm not going to call anyone out because if somebody did that to me, I would absolutely hate it, but wow, some of these comments. I have people saying that art is just dead now, that we murdered art and it's not coming back. People who say that movies as an art form are just gone. And some of that is probably my fault. I've probably fostered some of that because I'm talking about a lot of negative things on here. But here's the thing, I think that it is very necessary to talk about the negatives because we have to be honest about the bad things that are happening if we want anything to be fixed. I was just reading an interview with a producer, and they said that even people behind the scenes sometimes question, are movies just dead? And I'm here to tell you that they're not dead, and neither are the theaters. I mean, guys, they've been saying this for years. They said this when COVID was happening. They said, COVID is it. COVID is going to kill theaters. It's going to kill movies. And it didn't. Whenever things are going bad, then it's easy to just say that things are dead. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they are. And if anything was going to kill the movies, it was probably COVID. But now we're out of that, and we got to 2022, where we had some solid hits, and then we just had 2023, which overall was a pretty down year. In 2024, we'll have to see if it gets any better or worse. But what I'm getting at here is don't despair just because things are in a downturn. Change must happen, and that's for sure, and let's talk about that for a minute. Because at the same time, while I'm telling people not to be so down, there are other people out there that will say that everyone's just a complainer, everyone's just toxic, constantly complaining about movies. That's what much of movie YouTube has become. But at the same time, I'm gonna say, there's a reason why so much of movie YouTube is negative. On here, we're just a bunch of nerds who love talking about our nerdy stuff like Star Wars and Marvel and Lord of the Rings. And when we're dissatisfied with all of that, of course, our channels are going to become complainer channels, unfortunately. But it's because we care about this kind of stuff, and it's because our hobby, and when that hobby has gone sour, then it makes us want to talk about why it's gone sour. But that's why there's so much negativity around, because things are in fact bad. But I think that this negativity is reaching a new point where I think that a lot of apathy is starting to set in. For example, for a video that I was considering doing for January, I was considering talking about how the Rey movie has been canceled and how, or maybe it hasn't been canceled, and just talking about the state of Star Wars in general. But then I just didn't do it because I'm like, I don't really care anymore. Like, Disney has announced like how many Star Wars films at this point that they've shelved, and they're not getting anything off the ground. I don't feel like doing it. The number one thing I absolutely don't feel like talking about right now is DC. I want nothing to do with it. Marvel, I might have a little bit of energy left. But what I'm getting at here is that there is an apathy sort of setting in with me talking about these newer projects and how just nothing is changing, talking about Disney remakes. I'm just getting exhausted by it, and I'm getting that sense all around now that it's getting past the point of rage and anger and to the point of apathy with these projects. And I think that that is good, because when people are mad at something, then that means that they still have incentive to buy something, that they still care enough about it to see what's going on. But with apathy, no, there's no incentive to buy anything. People just don't pay attention. They don't care. Kind of like how I didn't care about the Echo Show, and people keep, somebody asked me to review it, and I'm like, I just don't really care. Like, I don't have to watch this show. It has absolutely nothing in it that appeals to me. But that is good, because we don't pay attention to the things that we don't like. And because of that, the money dries up. And through there, I think you're going to see a lot of panic and a big shift there. Because this sort of system right now can't survive in its form. I've talked about that. The companies as they are just cannot keep going like this. They have to turn a profit sooner or later. But of course, some people will question, with movies in such a bad place, such bad decisions being made over and over again, are we going to get to the place where Hollywood has collapsed? And a lot of people are saying that right now, that it's collapsed and that something else is going to rise up and take its place. And I have to disagree with you there. Now, I want to make it clear where I stand on Hollywood. I am not getting on here and saying I want Hollywood to burn. There are definitely bad practices, bad things that have gone on there that I want to change. I also don't want to forget that there are good people who work behind the scenes. Might not seem like it sometimes, but you know, it's the people like Alec Baldwin and Ezra Miller and all those people who are going to be making the headlines. There are normal people who work on movies and TV and stuff who aren't involved with that kind of stuff. And people who actually know how to be creative and how to craft good stories. I just don't think those people are getting the spotlight right now, either in the news or working on these projects. So I'm not on here wishing for the entire conglomerate of the movie industry to fall. If it does fall, and indie project and different companies companies kind of space out and create movies there, then I'm all for it. I'm all for movies in whatever form the future takes, but I just don't think that that is actually going to happen. And people who say that Hollywood is dead and Hollywood is going to burn and fall, I think that that is coming from a place of emotion. I think that that is them having some wishful thinking. And let me explain why. I'm an indie filmmaker, and as an indie filmmaker and someone who has talked to other indie filmmakers, I will tell you this. It is morbidly difficult to get a feature film made, to get it funded, to get it distributed. I just talked about that in my last video. There are people who for decades have tried to get their movie companies off the ground and tried to get their indie projects off the ground and tried to create new Hollywoods, and it just hasn't worked. This is stuff that was going on long before all of this war of the fandom started and all of that. The reason why Hollywood is as big as it is a century ago, multiple studios conglomerated there, multiple factions created the movie industry. You can't have just a couple filmmakers from Sacramento do it. You can't just have, movies are such a risky business, I don't think you can even have a singular company do that. But since Hollywood established itself as the movie business and still has decades upon decades and decades of success and iconography behind them, that means that they are where all the investors with all the money to make these movies go, and all the distributors. If you have a ton of money and you want to be a part of a successful movie, then you're probably going to want to go with the place with all the money and the glamour, not for some indie company. We indie filmmakers struggle with even getting our stuff out and getting it marketed. Why do you think a movie like The Batman is so successful? Is it just because of the IP name, or is it because these movie companies have investors that can afford to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on marketing for the posters, for the $1 million Super Bowl ad, so that is beamed into your face all the time? Indie filmmakers can't do that. And for all the people criticizing, saying you YouTubers need to promote these indie films, well, we try to. It's hard to get them to pick up on the algorithm because these films aren't well known. The average person isn't like us nerds looking up movies all the time. They need to have things advertised to them. You know, ads on their YouTube page telling them about a movie, or posters in the store when they're going to shop. That is how you advertise a movie and make sure the average person sees it. Indie filmmakers can't do that, or at least they haven't done it yet. And that's what I'm talking about here, of why this idea that Hollywood is just going to fall and then something else, this imaginary something else is going to take its place. It's a little easier said than done. Not that we can't try, because once again, the creatives who are good out there, a lot of them just aren't getting their work seen. But what we need in order to make these good movies again is we have to have people who are really passionate about the craft come forward and not only make the films, but figure out a way to get them distributed and marketed to the right people. For me personally, I'm getting a little tired of waiting for things to get better. I want to go out there and try to help things get better. So this year, as I'm working on the final draft of a certain script that I have, I think, confidence enough to go forward like this, I'm going to try to go through the process of how do I get this thing financed? If I were to get it shot, that would be an absolute miracle. Then how could I market this enough? I think it's those daring steps that have to be taken and those questions, and I hope I get at least somewhere in the process of doing that so I can understand this business even more. But I want to make one final point. Something that I've been trying to get at is that there's a lot of complaining and a lot of fantasizing about what's going to happen next for movies, but ultimately this fantasizing that just something else is going to take the place of Hollywood. I think the problem with that is that you have people who just like the idea of it rather than actually thinking about it in practice. And what you really need to be able to get good movies out there, or help to change the process of how movies are made, even in Hollywood, I think you need to have some very ambitious people who are, importantly, very passionate about story. It can't just be something created out of rage, something created out of anger towards the current Hollywood system and what they're currently putting out. It has to be from a place of passion that says, I would want to make movies even if things weren't bad right now. And that's where I'm at, so that's why I want to take that journey. But to wrap things up, this doom and gloom of things aren't ever going to get better, the pendulum always swings back. There have been bad times in movie history in the past, places when restrictions had been put on what kind of stories you could tell during the Hays Code, times when the economy hasn't been good. Things can get better. Just because we're in a downtime now doesn't mean that things are going to change. But I think the important thing right now, even as I'm working on my other projects of movie making behind the scenes, is to also understand what good storytelling and writing is. And that's why starting in February, I'm going to commit to what I said I was going to do, and I'm going to start doing movie reviews, of positive movie reviews, and talking about the best of movies. Because once again, there are decades upon decades of Hollywood movies that actually were good. You know, it's funny that people, you know, talk so down about the movie industry and Hollywood so much when so many of these franchises that we love started there. Not saying that Hollywood is a good place, but in the past it has fostered creatives who have given us this kind of property in the past, and I think that that can happen again. That's all I got for you guys today. What did you think about this video? Are you upset with what I'm saying? And let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.